For the sake of the sect, I confined myself in the forbidden ground for 500 years. But now that I've returned, everything has changed. The master despises me. The senior sisters loathe me. And the new junior brother has taken over everything that once belonged to me. However, through an illusion, I saw what would happen 10,000 years later. From then on, I tore up my sect's spirit contract and left. I became a wandering cultivator, seeking my own path. But just as I was triumphantly fighting my way to the heavens, my former master and senior sisters were begging me to return to the sect in tears. To this, I only had one response. Your beloved junior brother died 500 years ago. It was your choice. While Guzu was busy fishing for that piece of bone, on the other side, Yi Hongling and 3 others were swiftly moving through the forest. The other 3 were fine. But Yi Hongling kept looking back over her shoulder, her eyes filled with worrying. A Jindan stage cultivator noticed this and asked, Junior sister, are you perhaps worried about that wandering cultivator? Yi Hongling nodded, then shook her head. Yes and no. That fellow cultivator may not have high cultivation, but he has a unique skill for predicting enemy moves if he wants to hide. I believe there shouldn't be much of a problem. I was just thinking whether we should heed his advice and not ride the red-footed Wujui horse. Upon hearing this, the other 3 paused, looked at each other, and then burst out laughing. Ha ha! Junior sister Yi, you haven't really been fooled by that terrifying stage 3 wandering cultivator, have you? Senior brother Zhao was the first to speak, laughing heartily. The red-footed Wujui, a spirit beast unique to our Tian's manner, isn't so easily outwitted. Moreover, with senior brother Chen here at Jindan stage, the Chishui sect would have to be crazy to dare make a move against us, rest assured. These words, even Yi Hongling couldn't refute. Indeed, the red-footed Wujui was unique to Tian's manner. Raised from a young age using a special secret method, its innate strength was already at the level of a Tier 2 demon beast, and it was highly compatible with Tian's manner's techniques. Man and horse complemented each other perfectly, capable of unleashing power far beyond their own limits. Using any special means against it was nearly impossible. During the red-footed Wujui's training, precautions against poisoning or beast-taming techniques were already taken. Moreover, they had a Jindan expert guarding them. 1 Jindan and 3 Foundation establishment cultivators. With such strength, ordinary people wouldn't dare provoke them. However, despite these reassurances, Yi Hongling couldn't help but worrying a little. Moving on. The 3 continued their journey for an entire day. The speed of the red-footed Wujui was indeed fast. As night fell again, the 3 arrived at a small stream, taking a short rest for an hour. Once we've rested enough, we'll continue on. Aiming to leave the Tianqi mountain range before dawn, the 4 of them simultaneously fed their horses and took out spirit stones to restore their energy. They were very cautious when traveling. They wouldn't let the red-footed Wujui eat anything outside. All the fodder came from their storage rings. A gentle breeze blew, making the air feel much cooler. Junior sister Yi, look, now do you still think that wandering cultivator was telling the truth? Senior brother Zhao asked with a smile. Yi Hongling frowned but didn't answer. Instead, it was senior brother Zhao who spoke again. That wandering cultivator might have some skills, but he's still just a wandering cultivator. Whether in terms of knowledge or cultivation, he's far too low. He was displeased with how close Yi Hongling was to that wandering cultivator. And now he wanted to ruin the good impression that the wandering cultivator had left on Yi Hongling. However, it's a pity. Yi Hongling just shook her head. Brother Zhao, I remember the commander said that no matter when, we should never underestimate anyone. Brother Zhao was about to retort, but saw the nearby golden core cultivator suddenly stand up. Who's there? The other 3 were startled. The next second, countless arrows shot towards them. "Form up!" the golden core cultivator shouted. Yi Hongling and the other two immediately got up to prepare for battle, but just as they stood up, their expressions changed simultaneously. They held their breath. Poison! Unfortunately, they discovered it too late. The poison had already entered their bodies, making it difficult to exert their strength. Fortunately, the golden core cultivator was quite powerful. He waved his hand, instantly blocking the rain of arrows. After blocking one wave of arrows, the golden core cultivator shouted, "Mount up! Prepare to break through." The three didn't hesitate and mounted their horses first. Only then did they realize that somehow they were surrounded by a dense crowd of people. The Chishui sect dared to attack them. After firing the arrows, one of the golden core cultivators had already stepped into the air, heading towards the golden core from the Tian's mansion. The two golden core cultivators immediately clashed. Luckily, we brought the crimson-hoofed steeds. Brother Zhao didn't forget to mention. The implication was clear. Even though they were surrounded now with the crimson-hoofed steeds, they could use their battle techniques to break through. Moreover, they could quickly disperse the poison gas. Yi Hongling frowned, instinctively glanced at the crimson-hoofed steed, but still felt a bit worried. But this one glance was enough to reveal something unexpected. After glancing at it, Yi Hongling suddenly felt something was wrong. "Senior brother, there's something off about the barefoot black horse's eyes." Before she could finish speaking, she saw the barefoot black horse beneath her suddenly go mad, uncontrollably dashing off to one side. Caught off guard, Yi Hongling almost got thrown off the horse. Barely managing to steady herself, Yi Hongling looked up, only to see a scene that made her eyes widen in horror. The barefoot black horse beneath senior brother Zhao suddenly went berserk as well. He was equally unprepared, almost getting thrown off in surprise. But the members of the Red Water sect surrounding them seemed to have anticipated this. A poison arrow was shot directly, piercing from behind into senior brother Zhao, going through his heart. When Yi Hongling looked at him, he also happened to look back at her. In his eyes, there was a mix of despair and regret. Unfortunately, these emotions ultimately turned into lifelessness, with his heart pierced. Even a foundation establishment cultivator would surely die. While the Tiasi Mansion group was under attack, on the other side, Guzu was in another cave, sitting cross-legged. He sensed something, glancing in a certain direction, and eventually shook his head. He felt the intense fluctuation of the world's energy in that direction, indicating a fierce battle. Though he didn't know who was fighting, it had nothing to do with him. Retracting his thoughts, Guzu continued absorbing spiritual energy from his palm, when another spirit stone was absorbed and turned into dust. Guzu's cultivation level fluctuated. He advanced to the 4th layer of refining. He had progressed once again. Although this speed wasn't slow, the consumption of spirit stones was too high. Guzu murmured to himself. His deficiency of Qi was too vast, allowing him to advance quickly in cultivation. It was all due to the spirit stones. Cultivating in this manner was certainly possible, but it was undeniably expensive, and this was just the mid-stage of refining. If he were to advance further, the resources needed would be even greater. At that time, Guzu's current spirit stones would be insufficient. He needed to head to Yongshao City as soon as possible. Having made up his mind, Guzu didn't act rashly. Instead, he spent another half a night solidifying his cultivation level firmly at the 4th layer of refining. The path of cultivation required steady progress. Sometimes there was no rushing it. It wasn't until the next morning that Guzu finally left the cave. His cultivation was now completely stabilized. Determining his direction, Guzu set off once again. This journey, Guzu traveled for another 7 days. He was now halfway to Yongshao City, his intended destination. However, during his journey, Guzu suddenly stopped in his tracks. He swiftly turned his body, passing through a thicket, and arrived at a narrow path. As he approached, the strong scent of blood made Guzu frown involuntarily. Looking around, he saw numerous bodies lying in disarray. The assailant had been extremely ruthless and swift. Almost all the victims had been severed at the waist. The surroundings were in complete disarray. The scene was very bloody. However, what caught Guzu's attention was one particular corpse. That person was clutching a wooden box tightly in their arms. The wooden box looked exceptionally exquisite. On it was a complex array pattern, obviously set with a restriction to prevent it from being taken. Upon seeing this wooden box, Guzu's eyes couldn't help but shine with a gleam of excitement. However, as Guzu was staring at the wooden box, a cold arrow was aimed directly at his back. Just the fourth layer of terrifying, and you dare to wander here alone? You really are courting death. Big brother, should we kill him? Not far from Guzu, two figures were hiding in the shadows. One of them had drawn a bow, aiming directly at Guzu's back. These two men were no ordinary individuals. One of them was already at the peak of terrifying, while the other, though slightly weaker, was also at the 8th layer of terrifying. Both were late-stage terrifying experts. However, their auras were unstable, indicating they had just experienced a fierce battle. In fact, they had just come out of a major fight. The bloody scene Guzu witnessed was caused by these two. Their names were Confrontation and Confrontation. They were known by a notorious title, the Spring and Autumn Fiends. They were infamous bandits in this region, specifically targeting weaker cultivators, whether rogue cultivators or disciples of major sects, or even occasionally, merchant caravans would fall prey to them. Their cultivation levels weren't exceptionally high, but they were extremely cunning, especially in the art of escaping. They always picked weaker targets. But once stronger cultivators appeared, they would immediately flee without hesitation. This earned them the hatred of many, yet no one could do anything about it. Today, they heard that a caravan from Wenbao Tower was passing through this area. They immediately set up an ambush, and eventually succeeded in killing quite a few people. However, Wenbao Tower was indeed powerful. Even though it was just a small team, they still had a foundation establishment cultivator with them. Fortunately, the two brothers had prepared in advance. With a surprise attack and their coordinated efforts, they managed to kill that early foundation establishment cultivator. But they were also seriously injured and greatly exhausted. Moreover, many from the caravan managed to escape. They knew very well that they couldn't stay here long, but the goods from Wenbao Tower were all stored in Wenbao boxes. Without the secret method, no outsider could touch them, let alone open them. While the two were busy figuring out how to break the restriction on the Wenbao boxes and take them, Guzu arrived. The two, already jumpy, immediately hid. Only when Guzu appeared did they realize that the person in front of them was not from Wenbao Tower, but a small terrifying cultivator at the 4th layer. In response to his younger brother's query, Confrontation squinted his eyes and observed for a moment, finally nodding. Kill him! Confrontation prepared to act immediately, but Confrontation suddenly held him back. Wait! Confrontation was puzzled, but saw that Confrontation pointed at Guzu. That kid seems to have some skills. He appears to be undoing the restriction. Confrontation squinted his eyes, and sure enough, they saw Guzu with his back to them, completely unaware of their presence, was writing and drawing something. The Wenbao box occasionally emitted a faint light, but the light was gradually weakening. They underestimated this kid. Despite being just at the 4th layer of terrifying, he actually knew how to undo such restrictions. Could this kid be a talisman master? Who cares if he is a talisman master? This gave us the perfect opportunity to be the mantis stalking the cicada, while unaware of the oriole behind. Indeed, I was just worried about how to break this restriction. Unexpectedly, we ran into this kid. Let him painstakingly unlock it. Then we will be the Oriole. The two of them quickly made a plan. They decided not to act immediately. Instead, they kept a close eye on Guzu while slowly recovering from their injuries. However, after waiting for a while, Kaishin, still aiming at Guzu, couldn't help but frown. Is this kid capable or not? Why is he so slow? If he doesn't unlock it by the time the Wenbao Pavilion people arrive, we'll be in trouble. Big brother, should we kill him and unlock it ourselves? Otherwise, he's wasting all our time. Let's wait a bit longer. Fen Chunshin shook his head. He was anxious too. But remembering their helplessness against the Wanbao box, he doubted they could do better than this chair refinement stage for Junior. However, waiting again took quite some time. Big brother, it's been so long. I guess the Wanbao Pavilion people are getting closer. Fen Kaishin advised again. If we let this fool waste more time, we'll lose our chance. Someone from Wenbao Pavilion escaped earlier, and if their reinforcements arrive, the two brothers will be in a tough spot. No more waiting. This fool! Fen Chunshin cursed and was about to act. Fen Kaishin prepared to shoot an arrow. Wait! Fen Chunshin suddenly stopped Fen Kaishin. Looking back, he saw Guzu unlocking another restriction, and muttering to himself. He muttered under his breath. Only the last 4 layers remain. Alas, my cultivation is not enough. If only I had reached the late stage of chair-refining cultivation, it certainly wouldn't take this long. Guzu spoke these words lightly. If it weren't for the spring and autumn twin Scourge's brothers constantly observing Guzu with rapt attention, they wouldn't even have heard him. The two exchanged a glance. The implication was that the little cultivator at the 4th layer of chair refining could actually unlock this restrictive formation, but his cultivation was insufficient. Hence the slow progress. It would be best if someone could lend a hand. Now, I don't know how long it will take for someone to arrive. Suddenly, they saw Guzu speak up again. This statement made the two brothers hesitate once more. But as they hesitated, Guzu had already risen and sighed. Oh well, if I gain, I am fortunate. If I lose, it is my destiny. I'll be on my way. As he spoke, he stood up, prepared to leave. This caused the spring and autumn twin Scourge's brothers to lose their composure. They had been groping around for a while, but they were completely ignorant of the restrictive formation. If Guzu left, how would they open this mysterious casket? Fellow Taoist, please wait. Without hesitation, Fen Chunshin was the first to leap out, blocking Guzu's path. This sudden appearance was clearly beyond Guzu's expectations. Guzu was somewhat surprised. He immediately became alert. This expression amused Fen Chunshin. What use is alertness for a little cultivator at the 4th layer of chair refining? I've been watching you for quite some time. If I hadn't revealed myself, would you have been able to detect my presence? However, Guzu's reaction did confirm for Fen Chunshin that Guzu was completely unaware of his existence. Fellow Taoist, Fen Chunshin asked with a smile. I just saw you trying to unlock the restrictive formation on this casket. May I ask what your intentions are? What is this phalanx? Fen Chunshin was puzzled. He had studied this treasure box before and had not seen this piece of phalanx. Guzu, however, was fiddling around beside him, casually explaining, it is revealed automatically after several layers of the restriction are lifted. It is the core of this restriction. Fen Chunshin nodded, although he found it strange. Why the restriction of the treasure box would be a piece of phalanx? Since Guzu said so, he did not hesitate. Immediately, he poured all his spiritual power into it. Fen Chunshin was a bit stunned, because he discovered that when he poured his spiritual power crazily into the phalanx, the spiritual energy was absorbed by the phalanx instantly like a stone sinking into the sea. So terrifying. Is this really the core of the restriction? At this moment, Guzu spoke. Taoist friend, don't get distracted. Exert your full strength. I'm about to start breaking the restriction. Fen Chunshin was helpless, but he could only obey, and frantically poured his spiritual power into the phalanx. fearing that he might not use enough force, and thus couldn't assist Guzu. However, this frantic use of spiritual power caused Then Chunshin's already unrecovered spiritual power to begin depleting instantly. If Guzu hadn't really been breaking the restriction all the time, and in front of him, even breaking to more layers of restriction in a row, Then Chunshin would have suspected that this little cultivator at the 4th level of terrifying was deceiving him. But even so, Then Chunshin still found it hard to bear. Taoist friend, is it not done yet? Wait a little longer. Your spiritual power is still not enough. Taoist friend, remember not to hesitate at this time, otherwise the efforts will be in vain. Guzu replied. This made Then Chunshin grit his teeth. His spiritual power was almost exhausted. Hold on a bit longer. Then Chunshin said, immediately taking out a handful of spirit stones from his storage ring. Gritting his teeth, he began to recover. He then pulled out a bottle of pills and poured them into his mouth, since this little cultivator at the 4th level of terrifying had said so. Even if he couldn't hold on, he could only grit his teeth and persist. After all, once the box was opened, all the resources inside would be his. It wouldn't be a loss. However, at this moment, Then Chunshin didn't notice that while he was doing this, Guzu glanced more than once at his storage ring. Fortunately, hard work pays off. With Then Chunshin's relentless efforts, when his spiritual energy was about to run out again, the restriction on the constantly flickering treasure box was finally lifted. At the moment the restriction was lifted, Then Chunshin's face revealed a triumphant smile. He looked at Guzu with a mocking gaze. However, to his surprise, Guzu happened to turn around and also looked at him, showing the same smile. Taoist friend, now that the treasure box has been opened, should we proceed with the distribution as agreed? How would you like to divide it? Then Chunshin asked with a beaming smile. We had already agreed before. Guzu said, I take 7, you take 3. Then Chunshin said, we did agree beforehand, but there's a small problem. What problem? I think 30% is too little. Guzu asked. Then how much do you want to take? Taoist friend, seeing Then Chunshin's momentum suddenly surge, he said word by word, I'm at the 9th level of terrifying. Taking 90% should be no problem, right? Oh, and the last 10% is for my brother. As for yours, you'll have to ask the King of Hell for it. With that, Then Chunshin had already gathered his strength. He raised his palm and struck towards Guzu's face. Meanwhile, while Then Chunshin and Guzu were dealing with each other and breaking the restriction together, Then Kaishin had been keeping watch over the surroundings. His vigilance was, of course, for the people from the Wenbao Pavilion who could attack at any moment. The longer they waited, the more anxious he became. After all, his big brother had been gone for quite some time. If they delayed any longer, once the people from the Wenbao Pavilion arrived, it might be difficult for the two of them to escape. As for that white-haired rogue cultivator at the 4th level of terrifying, don't make me laugh. Such a low-level cultivator. Such a low-level cultivator. Then Kaishin hadn't paid any attention to him at all. After all, his big brother could crush him with a single finger. Why should he bother to notice him? Fortunately, just as Then Kaishin was about to lose his patience, a surge of spiritual power at the 9th level of terrifying suddenly appeared. Big brother had made his move. Then Kaishin's eyes lit up without hesitation. He turned around and rushed towards his big brother's location. He planned to meet up with his brother and then escape together. On the way, Then Kaishin was still thinking. Wenbao Pavilion is a famous trading company. Their goods must include many valuable items. If the resources were plentiful, especially if there were foundation establishment pills, maybe he and his brother could both advance to the foundation establishment stage. Just imagine 2 foundation establishment stage bandits. At that time, the name of the Chunshu Twin Devils would strike even more fear. Then they could continue their spree of killing and robbing. Maybe in the future, we can even reach the Golden Core stage. KTSK. Such a life. There's something to look forward to. Big brother. Just as he was imagining the future, Fan Kaishin saw his big brother's back. He was standing still, looking down at something. He must be inspecting the spoils of battle. But when he looked ahead of Fan Chunshin, Fan Kaishin found it odd. Big brother, where's that kid's body? Did you pulverize him into dust? Big brother, your skills seem to have improved again. As he spoke, Fan Kaishin arrived beside Fan Chunshin. Turning his head to look, he saw his big brother holding the previously untouchable treasure box. This sight made Fan Kaishin's eyes burn with desire. A drop of bright red blood suddenly dripped from above, landing on the treasure box. It turned into a beautiful blood flower, blooming open. What's this ... Fan Kaishin was stunned. His gaze moved upward. With just one look, Fan Kaishin felt a chill rushing from his feet to his head, making his legs go weak. He fell to the ground because he saw his big brother, the spring devil of the Chenshu Twin Devils, the ruthless and infamous 9th level refining cultivator, was dead. There was a blood hole in his left chest, where his heart had been shattered. Faintly, he could still see the broken pieces of his heart. That drop of blood just now had dripped from there. Big brother, how ... how could this ... At this moment, Fan Kaishin felt his calves cramping. A wave of coldness swept through his body, making him utterly terrified. At that moment, a pebble suddenly shot towards him, making a noise. Fan Kaishin was startled. Turning around to look, he didn't see who threw the pebble, but instead saw, not far away in the forest, a group of cultivators wearing Wenbao Pavilion uniforms, quickly approaching. They obviously saw Fan Kaishin too, and immediately shouted angrily, "Stop, thief! Dare to kill our Wenbao Pavilion members! You're seeking death!" Fan Kaishin was scared out of his wits, although he didn't understand where the pebble came from. But now, with strong enemies approaching, Fan Chunshin didn't hesitate anymore. His figure flashed, turning into a stream of light and fleeing rapidly to the side. Seeing this, the Wenbao Pavilion cultivators behind immediately chased after him. However, most of them headed straight for the treasure box first. The goods were the key, but when they reached Fan Chunshin's corpse and saw the restriction on the box had been lifted and the 3 storage rings inside had disappeared, the cultivators' faces turned dark. The Chenshu Twin Devils have turned on each other. Fan Kaishin killed his own brother and took our transported goods. Chase him! Get him back! Damn it! Spread the word! Issue a bounty for him. No matter where he runs, we must hunt him down. He dared to touch Wenbao Pavilion's property. He must be killed. Soon, a chase began in the Tianqi Mountains, but all of this had nothing to do with Guzu. At this moment, he was on a forest road, heading towards Yangshao City. He had indeed been trapped in the Forbidden's Land for 500 years. After returning from the Forbidden's Land, he had indeed noticed the Chenshu Twin Devils from the beginning. Everything that and also, finally framing Fan Kaishin. Stop! At that moment, a rainbow light shot towards him. Guzu stopped immediately, watching the newcomer warily. This person was riding a flying sword, slowly landing in front of Guzu. The ability to ride a flying sword indicated that the person was a powerful foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, this person was wearing Wenbao Pavilion's uniform. Though Guzu was cautious, he did not panic. He proactively asked, "May I ask why Senior has stopped me?" The person didn't answer, but immediately probed Guzu's cultivation. Upon seeing that Guzu was only at the 4th level of refining, he relaxed a bit. Have you seen a cultivator at the 8th level of refining using the wind evasion technique to escape? Guzu shook his head, indicating he hadn't. Upon receiving the answer, the person didn't bother to say more. He immediately rode his long sword and quickly left. Clearly, a 4th level refining cultivator, traveling slowly on this main road, couldn't possibly be related to the Chenshu Twin Devils. There was no need to waste time on him. Guzu wasn't surprised. Seeing the person leave, he silently continued on his way. He encountered several more inquiries after that, all from Wenbao Pavilion cultivators. But without exception, after seeing Guzu's cultivation level, they abandoned their suspicions and stopped wasting time on him. But just as night was about to fall, and Guzu planned to find a place to stay for the night, another rainbow light arrived. As before, the person got the same clueless response from Guzu and saw that Guzu was only at the 4th level of chair finding, lost interest and prepared to leave. But just as the person was about to leave, he seemed to suddenly remember something and abruptly turned back. He looked at Guzu with a cold gaze. "You have a storage artifact on you." Guzu raised an eyebrow. "Senior, this is just a storage bag. I don't see why, senior." "Hand it over." The person extended his hand. "I suspect that you might be in league with the thief Then Kaishin, and now you need to surrender your storage artifact." He said this with righteous indignation, but in reality, a glimmer of greed flashed in his eyes, revealing his true motive. Guzu frowned, one hand already secretly gripping that piece of phalanx.